Welcome to the Excellence at Work podcast, where we explore the strategies and best practices that drive business success. I'm Rachel Cooke, COO of Brandon Hall Group and the host of our podcast, along with members of our executive team. In each episode, we'll dive into the latest trends, insights, and real-world examples from some of the most exciting leaders from organizations worldwide. Be part of our journey and learn from the best as we discuss innovative approaches and cutting-edge technologies for talent management, learning and development, leadership, diversity and inclusion, and more. Hi, I'm Rachel Cooke, the COO of Brandon Hall Group and our host of Excellence at Work podcast. Welcome. Today, we are digging into one of the most underrated workforce challenges out there, financial stress. Employers are spending more than ever on benefits and well-being programs, but new research shows a striking disconnect. 6 in 10 employers believe they are supporting employee financial wellness well, or financial health well, while fewer than 3 in 10 employees agree. We're going to discuss how this is truly impacting organizations today, what HR and other leaders should be aware of, and an operating model to consider to get healthier. Joining me is Heidi Grecsek, our Managing Director from Brandon Hall Group. Thanks for being here, Heidi.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for hosting, Rachel.
I'm excited to just kind of dig into this topic because this impacts everyone, right? And the work that you've been doing, Heidi, and then the research you've been undertaking and studying and speaking with organizations on this topic. You've recently released a research study and other insight pieces that covers this important benefit area. So Heidi, why don't we start with how this issue is affecting organizations and how does employee financial stress affect organizational performance beyond absenteeism and productivity?
It's definitely something organizations need to pay attention to. Absolutely. I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that financial wellness isn't just a personal issue anymore. It comes to the office. It's become a serious business performance issue. Think about it. If you've been laying awake at 2 o'clock in the morning wondering how you're going to pay an unexpected bill, healthcare for your child, or deal with an elderly, you're probably not bringing your best self to work the next day. And we've all been there at some point. In fact, some of us, many, many times over, even many times a week in some cases. You might be physically at work the next day, but mentally you're somewhere between. You're thinking about your checking account or you're trying to deal with your credit card balance. Financial stress quietly impacts almost every workforce metric that leaders care about. It reduces focus, hurts productivity, absolutely increases absenteeism, contributes to burnout, and makes employees more likely to look for another job. They may feel like they're forced, even if they're happy where they are. The challenge is that you don't see financial stress on a dashboard. Instead, you see declining engagement, higher turnover, delayed retirements, increased health costs, which is definitely not what you want, neither the employee or the employer, and definitely lower productivity. The research is pretty compelling. About 40% of employees report missing work over a 6-month period because of financial stress. Others spend time during the workday dealing with personal financial issues instead of focusing on their jobs. They may be calling the bank, figuring out how to pay medical bills, or worrying about making rent. That cognitive load is real, and it follows them into every meeting, every customer interaction, and every decision they make. What makes this even more interesting is that many organizations have already invested in financial wellness programs, which is great. Maybe they purchased a platform, launched a communications campaign, and checked the box. And those are great things, and that's a step in the right direction. But there is a very important catch that they should be concerned about and think through. Simply offering a benefit doesn't solve financial stress. Offering it is not necessarily the same as using it. If employees don't trust the program, don't know it exists, or don't know how to use it when they actually need the help, the organization ends up really paying twice if you think about it. They're paying for the benefit itself, and they're paying for the cost of financial stress through all the things that we talked about before, the loss in productivity, the absenteeism, the disengagement, and even worse, the turnover. So it's getting pretty serious. Rachel, any comments? You've had years and years of experience with dealing with some top leaders. Any comments from you from the Brandon Hall Group perspective?
Absolutely. And the more that we, when you started to dive into this topic and, when our team starts to research, it becomes something we all become interested in, right? And even if we were currently interested in, but it becomes top of mind and we start having more conversations and we start speaking to our clients, well, what are you doing around this topic? And as we continue to research financial wellness, we truly believe it can no longer be viewed as just another employee benefit. It needs to be managed as part of an organization's workforce strategy, right alongside employee experience, well-being, retention, and productivity. In a study of award-winning organizations at Brandon Hall Group, through our Excellence Awards program, it is amazing that this important benefit, if it exists, falls below many other benefits, even things like physical health, gym or health support, for example. And education alone isn't enough. We don't need another webinar telling people they should save more money. Most people already know that. What they need is practical, personalized, and confidential support that helps them take action, whether that's building an emergency fund, paying down debt, understanding their benefits, or preparing for retirement. Employees need guidance they can actually use. And it's a shame that we don't learn this often early enough in life when we start out in the workplace, or even before when we are going through high school and college. They just don't prepare typically, unless you are pursuing a financial degree or degrees in this area. So, it's really something that benefits everyone as we look at this and how we really can help employees do a better or have a better understanding and how to actually apply it.
Yeah, it definitely hurts the business when it's not addressed. So the real question is, are employees taking action? So there's things that you can look at to see if they are, and they need to. Are hardship withdrawals decreasing? Is absenteeism improving? Are employees feeling more prepared or are more prepared for retirement? Are retention rates getting better? These are the outcomes executives care about because those are the outcomes that can impact business performance. And when employees are healthier financially, organizations become healthier too. It's one of those rare situations where everyone wins. And honestly, we could all use a few more of those, especially in this day and all these changing costs and rising gas prices and grocery bills and everything else. So anyway, back to you, Rachel.
Yeah, it's interesting too. It's not always necessarily a pay raise that helps. If their habits and if they don't understand how to invest, the issues continue to evolve. It's not necessarily how much you're making. Obviously, it helps as you advance in your career to make more, but it also really helps if you start off at the very beginning with really practical strategies that you build along the way. And I think we all know, but maybe don't think about, is that financial stress touches every level of the organization, every level through senior leadership. Heidi, does that change how the business case for action gets made internally?
Absolutely. I mean, nobody is immune from this, from frontline workers all the way up to the CEOs. I think it spans everybody, and it's very personalized, like we mentioned earlier. For sure.
HR may lead the strategy, but it really becomes a partnership across HR, finance, benefits, total rewards, and even executive leadership. They don't wake up in the morning wondering whether their financial stress belongs to HR or finance. They just know that they are worried about paying for childcare, saving for retirement, or dealing with an unexpected medical bill. They expect their employer to make getting help simple. If employees have to bounce between the different vendors, 3 different portals, and remember 6 different passwords, let's be honest, most of us can't even remember the password to our streaming service. They're probably going to give up before they ever get started or before they get the help they really need.
So who owns it then? Is it HR or is it finance? I actually think that's one of the biggest challenges because it used to fall very clearly into one bucket. 10 years ago, it was definitely viewed as an HR benefit. It sat alongside things like gym discounts or employee assistant programs. It was nice to have, but it wasn't something the executive teams ever really talked about, especially during business reviews. However, when this stress started showing up all over the place in productivity, retention, healthcare costs, which is a double down, retirement readiness, and employee experience, it stopped being an HR conversation and it became a business conversation. And the reality is, I think it's important that organizations realize that no single department alone is going to be able to solve this. HR should, I agree, lead the strategy, and they usually are. They're responsible for the benefits portfolio and the employee experience and their well-being. But finance cares too, because finance stress impacts labor costs significantly. And in many organizations, probably most, labor is one of the most expensive things you have. Retirement liabilities, that's another really big one. And the return on the benefit investments is important too. Operations cares because, my gosh, depending on the organization, distracted employees, that could be a very big mess. Serious affecting productivity and output and profits. Even business leaders care because they see it in engagement scores and turnovers within their own teams. That's certainly a huge time dunk when you have to replace employees, when you have to spend time talking them off a ledge and helping them. That's a lot. That's a lot on a manager. I'd say that most successful organizations don't ask who owns financial wellness. They ask how can we work together to improve workforce performance. Rachel, you've encountered many award-winning organizations in your time. What do you think about this ownership?
I couldn't agree more. I think it's a big piece around communications and how, going back to what you mentioned earlier, the different types of resources that are available and benefits are available. Do people really know about it? Do they have access, easy access? Is it integrated in a way that they can be able to leverage it? And also, we see too, especially in, I don't want to just say new employees or new work or earlier or younger workforce population when they are just getting started. A lot of them may not have the information or the experience, and I think guiding them. But we do see this in every stage and in every level of the organization, and obviously there's some variances and variables throughout, but the communication piece is really helpful, and ensuring that the resources are easy and accessible to obtain. And as we look at the workforce, and the different markets, what are some realities that should be considered that you found in your research?
There's definitely a few. And it may depend on the organization, Rachel. Certainly, and some are going to play stronger than others, and maybe some need to think about other things. But 5 have really kind of jumped to the top of the heap in many cases. The first of the 5 is that while financial stress is incredibly common, the reasons behind it are very personal. If you think about it, it's easy to look at your workforce and think everyone needs financial education, but that's not the case. A 24-year-old just starting their career has completely different challenges than somebody who's 45 with 2 kids heading towards college, or somebody who's 60 wondering if they're ever going to be able to retire. And then a timely conversation that we talk about all the time this day in the workplace, right? Gen Z may be trying to build credit and simply make it to the next paycheck. Millennials are balancing mortgages, childcare, student loans. Generation X is often supporting both children and aging parents while trying to catch up on retirement savings. And many baby boomers are asking, can I actually afford to retire or ever retire? I may need to work for the rest of my life. It's a very stressful situation. So one size just doesn't fit all. It spans the organization and it spans the generations. The second reality is that emergency savings have become one of the biggest opportunities for employers. I actually personally found this incredibly interesting as I dug into research. For real, I didn't think this one was going to spike so big, but I think in the newer workforce and a lot of the frontline employees are really struggling. They're really struggling with that emergency savings. And when they live paycheck to paycheck, it's hard. So we think financial wellness starts with investing. And that's great, and it's important. But for many employees, it starts with having enough money set aside so they can fix a flat tire or pay an unexpected medical bill so that it doesn't become a financial crisis. When people don't have any safety net at all, everything else starts to unravel. They may rely on high-interest credit cards, take hardship withdrawals from retirement accounts, delay health care, or simply become completely overwhelmed by stress, which is what we're talking about here and that we don't want to see. How can we fix that? So that's why we're seeing such a rapid growth in employer-sponsored emergency savings accounts, which is fantastic, and earned wage access programs. They give employees a little more financial breathing room that they can have a meaningful impact on attendance, retention, and overall well-being. So that's 2. The third reality is that student loans haven't gone away. I don't know if you've seen the price of college. I personally now have 2 kids in college, and it is very expensive. And those loans are expensive, and they take a long time to pay off. There are some new things that are happening out there that are making that better, but they're still very significant, and they weigh heavily on the minds of the younger generations. For a long time, organizations viewed student loan assistance as a recruiting tool for younger employees. Today, it's much broader than that. So thanks to Secure 2.0, if you haven't heard of that, it's a major piece of federal legislation signed into law late in 2022 that has employers now have new opportunity to make retirement matching contributions based on an employee's qualified student loan payments, which is fantastic. So that's a huge step towards employees getting some help and no longer having to choose between paying down debt today and saving for retirement tomorrow. They can finally actually make progress on both. Another reality is the role of AI. Rachel, the Brandon Hall Group is deep into AI readiness progression. Any thoughts on how organizations should consider this as it relates to financial stress?
Sure. AI has incredible potential to make financial wellness more personal and more accessible. Imagine receiving guidance that's actually relevant to your life instead of generic articles that everyone receives, right? Employees need to trust the technology. They need confidence that their information is private, that recommendations are accurate, and that there's still a human expert available when they need one. I like to think of AI as a great GPS. It can point you in the right direction, but sometimes you still want to talk to someone who's actually been there before.
Yeah, definitely. The human part of it is huge. And finally, we're seeing financial wellness become much more integrated. So I think that's something else that employers really need to think about. Employees are looking for one connected experience instead of 5 different websites with 5 different logons. I have a huge spreadsheet myself. It's absolutely ridiculous. So they need it integrated into what they're using today. And at the same time, they're not going to compromise on privacy. Rachel, you mentioned that a couple minutes ago, and that's a very, very serious thing to consider. They want to understand where financial risk exists across the organization while keeping individual financial information completely confidential. Employees do not want companies to be, diving into the details of their financials. So how do you help them? How do you relate with them without doing that? When you put all these trends together, one thing becomes very clear. Ultimately, the organizations that will be the most successful aren't the ones with the most tools. They'll be the ones that take these tools, make them easy to access, easy to trust, and easy to use when employees need them the most.
Absolutely. It's a win-win because employers that do this, organizations that are focused, there are also additional benefits for them. Tax credit benefits, as you mentioned before, on engagement and retention. And then the benefits, obviously, for the employee population it's endless, the amount of impact that this can truly have across the organization. And talking about the data piece and going back to that part, how can employees be sure that their data is confidential?
That's probably the number one question that many people, employees ask, and they should ask it. They should know the details of that. It's important. So for many financial wellness programs, it comes down to one word: trust. If employees think their manager, HR, or their employer can see their bank account, their debt, or how much they've saved for retirement, they're simply not going to use the program at all. It doesn't matter how great the technology is. The good news is that inside of my research that I've done into many leading technology providers of financial wellness, they've really taken a very serious approach to this and built their platforms with privacy as a core principle. So it's important to take that into account. For example, they use enterprise-grade security, including SOC 2 Type 2, ISO certifications, along with bank-level encryption to protect employee data. So evaluating that carefully is super important, but luckily there are some tools out there and organizations that have done that for many of these companies, which is great. And many organizations also already use cybersecurity even as a benchmark against, the importance of keeping this financial data secure. But technology is only part of the story, to be very clear. What's equally important is who can actually see the information. To be able to lock that down and filter that is very important. Employers generally receive aggregated, anonymous workforce insights, things like participation rates, retirement readiness trends, or the financial topics employers are most interested in. That helps HR understand where support is needed without exposing anybody's personal financial situation. So they can see kind of everything as just a whole, not just John. So they don't receive a report that says John has $12,000 in credit card debt, ding, 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 or Sarah only has $500 in savings. Simply not how the best platforms are designed, which is great. The other thing I really like about many solutions I've looked at is that they combine technology with human expertise. This is definitely a topic that AI and technology is super important and bringing it all together. But human intervention and privacy are also super important. And it's not just an IT issue, it's an adoption issue also. They need to be able to use it and they need to be able to trust it. If they use it, they're much more likely to improve their financial well-being. And when that happens, both employees and employers benefit. I always tell organizations, you can buy the best financial wellness platform in the world, but if employees don't trust it, you really just purchased an expensive logon page. So that's why transparency, security, and confidentiality aren't just features, the foundation that makes financial wellness work. And it's something that corporations need to take just as seriously.
Absolutely.
What do you think, Rachel?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And on the flip side of it, just without the employees trusting in the ability to ensure that this is going to help them and that they are going to create habits and have strategies that can relieve some of their financial stress, not just short term. It really needs to be long term. It needs to be something that they can implement into their overall, work life balance, right? It's all part of wellness. It's all part of being healthy mentally, physically, emotionally. This ties directly to their emotional aspect of their own well-being. So, and as an employer, it's really part of our responsibility, right? Part of organizations' responsibility to be able to offer this and also be able to figure out strategies that they're leveraging it. They can't fix everything, but they can certainly ensure that they have the ability to offer this in a way that is accessible and that they can receive it and be able to utilize this. What are some of the other emerging technology trends that HR leaders should watch out for?
So this is important. And we were talking about a lot of really important things, but it's an exciting time because financial wellness technology is evolving very, very fast, especially in the face of AI. But this is an important statement. But I also, after all my research, I really think organizations have to be very, very careful not to chase every shiny new feature. The question is not, does the platform have AI? Of course it does. They all do nowadays. The real question is, will it actually help employees make better financial decisions? So in answering that, one of the biggest trends we've been seeing is this is really getting into it, which is exciting. Things like hyper-personalization. That's kind of a mouthful, but if you think about what that means, a few years ago, financial wellness platform grouped employees into broad categories like, oh, they're a new hire, they've been here for 5 years, or they're in the middle of their career. Or, oh, they're going to be retiring probably in a few years. That's better than nothing. But today, technology can make that much, much smarter. Instead of sending everyone the same newsletter every month, platforms are beginning to understand what's happening in employees' life and provide support when it's needed. So that's that hyper-personalization I was talking about. And it's what people expect, that you want to hear about your needs. You don't want to hear about, everybody else's. Imagine you receive a promotion or a large bonus. Instead of hoping you remember to increase your 401k contribution, the platform might send a timely suggestion saying, hey, congratulations, Rachel. Would you like to increase your retirement savings or move this into an emergency fund? That's incredibly valuable because timing often determines whether somebody is going to take action. And if they see it at that time, they may do and take that important action. Another trend I've been watching is the evolution of AI financial co-pilots. We all know co-pilot these days, or many people do anyway. Today's AI can have much more meaningful conversations. An employee might ask, I just got promoted. How does that affect my retirement strategy? And these platforms and these new AI co-pilots can really answer it for that individual. Or they might ask, should I pay off my student loan faster? Or should I increase my 401k contribution? What's going to give me the best financial benefit? That some of these platforms can actually evaluate what the other benefits that they have they may not even be thinking about. They can evaluate that particular organization's retirement plan, their healthcare savings account, and even student loan information to provide spot on personalized guidance in a matter of seconds, which is absolutely amazing, which used to take many, many phone calls and maybe never actually figuring out, and spreadsheets, and maybe never even ever actually figuring it out. Now, I don't believe AI can replace financial advisors. In fact, I personally had an experience recently where I tried to do something on AI and I had to have it was not bad, but it definitely needed human intervention to make it right. And it was really important. I think it makes expert guidance available for far more people and helps employees know when it's time to have a conversation with a human expert. So you have to know when that time is. Think of it as your first stop, AI, not as your only stop. So that's also very important to keep in mind. Another trend is embedded finance. So we touched on this a little bit earlier, but I'm just going to spend a little more time because I feel like it's very easy for organizations to say, gosh, I want better productivity. I want more focus on the job. I want more out of everybody. And, if they're stressing over finance, that's not happening. But financial wellness has to be in the tools that employees use today. I mean, I go to my desk and I'm using Word and Excel and Outlook and oh my gosh, literally 18 different tools. And it gets overwhelming. And you finally start picking those that you use all the time. So it needs to be inside of the tools that they're using every day, instead of just being another website that they have to visit. I don't know about you, Rachel, but sometimes I have like 30 windows open all at the same time. And, it needs to be there. We're seeing payroll-linked emergency savings, earned wage access, retirement planning, and benefits all becoming part of one connected experience. The less friction we create, the more likely employees are actually going to use these resources. So have it there, have it available all the time. And that's really been one of the biggest lessons over the past few years. The best financial wellness programs aren't necessarily the ones with the most features. It's the ones that employees are actually using. Now, one of my favorite topics to consider, we're also seeing behavioral science become much more important. Technology is starting to help people make better decisions by making the right choice the easiest choice. Imagine every time you receive a raise, one automatically goes into your emergency savings until you've built a comfortable cushion. Most people probably wouldn't even miss it. But over time, it creates a real financial resilience, which is great. And it makes them less stressed and it makes them much more productive. Some platforms, which I find this one very interesting, some platforms are also introducing gamification, not turning finances into a video game, but to celebrate progress, building an emergency fund, paying down a debt, or constantly contributing to retirement are all milestones, worth recognizing. And even if that recognition is only coming to you for the system to say, oh my gosh, Heidi, you just paid down this credit card debt and you're done. I would celebrate. I would celebrate that a lot. So that would make me happy. My wellness score would go up for sure. So I think that'll be a good one and a winner for sure with everybody using that type of technology these days. So the platforms that are winning really are bringing all these pieces together into one dashboard that gives employees a complete picture of where they stand. So Rachel, back to you. What would you say to HR leaders that are considering implementing improved financial wellness?
Great question. And I just wanted to comment on some of the trends that you just shared. And, it's just going back to our earlier conversation, right? Is just having the information and helping you kind of rethink your habits to be able to make better decisions and to prompt you when you get a raise or take out that 1% or even 0.5% out of your paycheck that you may not miss, even if it's a couple of dollars or maybe a little bit more than that. Over time, that builds, so much into your retirement and into your safety net. So, but, oftentimes we can't do this alone, especially when we're inundated with so much else in our life, managing our kids, managing our aging parents, or managing ourselves, and sometimes our health issues that may come up from time to time. Everyone is different. And so having the ability to have these tools makes it so much easier to make better decisions and to relieve some of that stress that you don't realize until it becomes a major issue in your life. And hopefully this does not become an issue for anyone listening in, but more of a way to think about it. And for HR leaders, though, I'd offer one piece of advice here. Don't evaluate technology based on how impressive the demo is. Evaluate it based on whether it changes employee behavior. Does it help employees save more, reduce debt, improve retirement readiness, lower financial stress? Those are the outcomes that matter. And that is what, a lot of our discussion today that Heidi and I have and the research and she uncovered during this study, let's get practical. If an organization wanted to build a real operating model around financial wellness, not just another standalone benefit, where should they start, Heidi? Is there a sequence, and how do they know it's working?
Yeah, so I think the keyword there is operating model. And there's a lot of different operating models that you could consider. And there's probably, different organizations may need to have different operating models, but we have seen some of the leading organizations follow a sequence that really seems to be working. The first step of that sequence that we've seen is you really have to diagnose what the problem is, right? Because every organization is different. It could be a whole variety of different things that are causing the problem. Before buying technology or launching a new initiatives, organizations need to understand where their employees are struggling. Are they a younger group, an older group? They should be doing employee surveys. I mean, surveys are tough these days, but when you're at a company and your company asks you to do a survey, a lot of times you are going to do that survey because it's important. What are the benefits they have? What are they missing? What are they utilizing of those benefits? Absenteeism, retirement plan data, EAP trends, and even employee listening sessions. All those things are super critical to knowing what to prioritize when you're trying to fix some of this financial wellness. So it's a simple question. Where is financial stress creating the biggest impact on our workforce, on that organization's workforce? So once you figure that out, then you have to prioritize, because there's never I'm going to go out on a very short limb and say it's not going to be one thing. There's going to be a list. So, you can't do it all at once. So do that prioritization. Maybe for some, emergency savings is the biggest issue. They find out that their employees are sitting around stressed because they're just not saving enough money for that day when they really need it. Maybe it's student loans. Maybe it's a very young organization that their big stress is how are they ever going to make that loan payment? Or maybe it's helping employees navigate healthcare costs or preparing for retirement. So you have to prioritize those for your organization. And we've seen the successful companies that have done this really pick like 2 or 3 priorities just to start to make a measurable difference rather than trying to do all of the things at once. The third step that we've seen people do is design an integrated experience. So we've talked about this now a couple of times in our conversation, Rachel. It has to be in there. A collection of different things all over the place is they don't want that, they don't like that, and they don't think of it in that way. And life happens in moments. You might get in a car wreck one day, you might have a parent pass away somewhere else, you might get married, you might have a baby, you might get a promotion. It's a financial hardship in many cases. And they need to consider that carefully. Financial wellness would show up during these moments with the right resources at the right time. So when these things happen, what platform can they go to say, how can I manage this? How can I deal with this? What can I do? Instead of expecting employees to sit at their desk and waste time and productivity and search it all up on their own. The next big step is integration. And this one can be a challenge, but it's important to think about it because, again, they don't want to open up another browser window. They don't want to add another program, to work on. It needs to connect payroll, retirement providers, benefits administration, employee assistant programs, HR service center, well-being initiatives. The more connected the experience, the easier it becomes for employees to take that action that they really need to take to relieve their financial stress. Then comes activation. This is where many organizations struggle. Just because you offer a benefit doesn't mean employees will use it. So think about the treadmill that becomes I had one of these, actually it was elliptical, for years in my office. And it was a clothes rack, as a matter of fact. And I work out all the time, but that elliptical, it wasn't getting used. So that's not improving my health. I mean, I like it for a clothes rack, but I actually need to use it for an elliptical. And financial wellness works the same way. Organizations need targeted communications. I love this one, personalized nudges. So like we talked about earlier, Rachel just got a big raise. Don't you want to put some of that money away, Rachel? Right? Webinars. I mean, it all depends. People take in content. And Rachel, you and I actually talked about this earlier today. People are taking in content in all different ways. I might want to see a video. I actually might want to read something, but I can tell you my son does not want to read something. He wants to watch a video. So there's all these different ways that you have to think about communicating this and making sure they're using it. And I'm going to talk about that in a couple minutes. But financial coaching, again, back to that human element, it's not all technology, SaaS-based tools, and AI. You need to do some financial coaching with humans as well. Manage your referral resources and simple milestones that encourage employees to take that first step, because maybe Rachel, you're going on a 2-week vacation when we're doing all this. You have to continuously encourage and get them on board. I mean, it does take some time. So there's so many ways, Rachel, to measure how financial plans are working. How have you seen some top organizations doing this?
What's exciting, and especially when we look at our awards applicants and the high-performing organizations, and we've seen some of their examples through their case studies, And once employees begin taking action, that's when it's time to measure. And what executives really want to know is, are we changing behavior and is it improving business outcomes? That means looking at leading indicators like emergency savings, participation, coaching engagement, debt reduction, or retirement contribution rates, while also tracking business outcomes like absenteeism, retention, hardship, withdrawals, retirement readiness, and productivity. Those are all indicators that leaders or HR leaders see as how engaged or how they are utilizing, right, their wellness programs if they do have it in place. And the success is really around then, looking at that measurement, the metrics, right, the indicators, and then what kind of action then, what they should then continue as far as next steps on the organization side, right? So Heidi, what are your thoughts as far as, from your research, in addition to what it, some of what we're seeing here?
Well, you mentioned leading indicators, and that's really there's leading, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this later, but there's leading indicators, and then there's indicators that happen, after. Are things reduced? Is productivity increased? And so I think that's something that they need to take very seriously and continue to watch. But again, it all depends on, what type of organization, what your goals are, what you initially prioritize, and what makes sense for your organization. Because lastly, organizations really should continue to scale this, because they are going to get better. They're going to get stronger. They're going to get more productivity, and their top line and their bottom line are going to go up. But not every initiative will work equally well for every workforce. So I think it's that prioritization that's super important. But the best organizations, what I saw, they continuously evolve what's working, and they evaluate what's working. They refine the communications. They improve the integrations, because I worked in corporate world for a long time, and every time, no offense to vendors of, technologies, but every time one said to me, "Oh, it's so fast, and it's so easy, and it's going to be great." Well, it might be great, but it doesn't happen overnight. And so you have to continue to build and improve those integrations. And again, get it closer to the employee all the time, and continue to build that roadmap, continuously building the roadmap.
Jump in too.
Yeah.
Even with the use of AI, it's faster, right? Technology's faster, but I don't think people's ability sometimes to adopt it is as fast as AI is moving, as fast as that with the technology. So that's something that we need to consider. And I think also solution providers and also on the HR side, right, is to partner together here to kind of sometimes close that gap, because as fast as AI is changing and helping us on the communication and change management side is something, where the people element is just as important.
Yeah. I can barely keep up with how fast AI is changing, more or less, using it on some days. I use it all the time, constantly. Right. It's a constant improvement process. So I couldn't agree more. And maybe that's one of the biggest takeaways. So, but I mean, I guess back to financial wellness, it's, I think what we're saying is you just don't launch it and check off the lists and it's done. It's something you have to continuously improve. And your workforce is, my gosh, right? Like every day there's a new company, many companies on the news as their workforce changes dramatically. So your financial wellness is going to have to change along with that too. So, but when organizations follow that sequence that we just talked about, diagnose, prioritize, design, integrate, activate, measure, scale, financial wellness stops being another employee benefit. It's an expectation, and it's important.
Absolutely. Heidi, as we wrap up today, our talk on this important topic, if you could leave HR and benefit leaders listening with one action to take this quarter, what would it be?
I'd encourage them by starting asking, what financial challenges are your employees trying to solve? Because we've talked about this now last little while. It's going to be different depending on the organization. So and you, HR, knows your people. Is it an older scientific organization that there's a huge retirement need, or maybe it's a very young insurance sales organization where their student loans are, taking up 2 hours of their day trying to deal with. I think you really need to think through what's really going to benefit your organization and listen to your workforce. Spend the quarter listening to your workforce. Use those surveys we talked about, focus groups, maybe some focus groups. I love that. And definitely your benefits data. I mean, that's a no-brainer. I'm sure you're looking at it anyway, but maybe look at it through the lens of if I bolt on some financial wellness into this, based on what I'm hearing from my workforce, these are some of the benefits that I'm going to get out of that. Then pick at least one priority, whether it's, like you said, emergency savings, retirement, education, and then start building your strategy around that. I think that's what I would say. Financial wellness isn't about offering more benefits. It's about helping employees take meaningful action. And when employees become more financially confident, organizations become stronger, more productive, and more resilient too. That's
And
what I would do.
that's great, Heidi. Thank you. And as we see organizations continue to focus on wellness and how important wellness is, this is one critical area of it around financial wellness and reducing stress and overall emotional well-being. And I'm really excited that we're covering this even more so. We've, kind of dabbled in it over the years and touched on it a little bit, but it's really meaningful. And just kind of, going through this today and talking through it, and as we continue to research this area, brings, I think I'm excited to be able to offer this and to be able to see how impactful it can be. So thank you, Heidi, and thank you everyone for joining us.
Thanks. It was great. A topic I love. Have a good day. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Have a great one.